The hands from the darkness. I will never forget that night. I was around 8 or 9 years old, living alone with my mother in a small house. Since she worked night shifts, I had to sleep alone in the big bedroom with a large double bed. I never liked sleeping alone, but I had no other choice. For as long as I could remember, I had felt that something was wrong with that room. Some nights, I would hear faint scratching noises under the bed, like something crawling beneath it. At times, I could feel a cold draft seeping up from the floor, even though the windows were shut tight. But I always convinced myself it was just my imagination until that night, the beginning of the nightmare. I woke up in the middle of the night for no reason. The room was shrouded in darkness, except for a faint glow from the street lamp outside filtering through the window. I tried to shut my eyes and go back to sleep, but then I felt it. Someone was watching me. The sensation was overwhelming. My skin prickled with unease. My heartbeat thundered in my chest. I tried to ignore it, but then I heard it. Scratch, scratch. The sound came from beneath the bed, faint, rhythmic. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to look. I couldn't, but some invisible force compelled me to do so. Slowly, I let my gaze drift toward the edge of the bed, and that's when I saw it. From beneath the bed, a hand emerged. It wasn't a human hand. The skin was torn, hanging in bloody strips, revealing pale bone underneath. The fingers were long, twisted, unnaturally sharp, as if they had once belonged to a person but had been corrupted into something monstrous. Then a second hand crawled out, then a third. They clung to the edge of the bed, fingers curling as if trying to pull something up. The hands moved in a slow, deliberate motion. They were climbing, terror on the bed. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My throat had locked up. My body refused to move. My eyes were frozen wide open, forced to watch as those wretched hands crawled higher and higher. I turned my head away, desperate to escape the sight. But the moment I did, I realized I was not alone in the bed. Something was lying right next to me. It was a white figure, human-shaped, but without a face, no eyes, no nose, just a featureless void. But I could feel it staring right at me. It was breathing. I could hear the faint, slow breaths right next to my ear. The figure did not move, but I could feel the deathly cold radiating from it, sinking into my skin. I wanted to run. I wanted to bolt out of bed, but my body remained paralyzed. Then I felt movement from beneath me. I glanced down. The hands had reached the top of the bed, and they were no longer just hands. They were connected to something else. A grotesque, disfigured corpse was crawling out from under the bed. Its flesh was shredded, hanging in rotting strands, exposing the skeletal remains underneath. Its face was distorted, hollow eyes gaping wide, its mouth stretched open in an endless, silent scream, and it was dragging itself toward me. I could feel my sanity slipping. I couldn't endure it any longer. With a burst of sheer desperation, I threw myself off the bed and ran for the door. I didn't dare look back. I bolted straight to my grandmother's room, banging on the door with all my strength. Grandma knew. When she finally opened it, I collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I tried to explain what I had seen, my words coming out in choked gasps. She was silent for a long time. Then, in a trembling voice, she whispered, "I've seen it too." Her words sent a chill deeper into my bones than anything else that night. I stared at her, hoping she was joking, but she wasn't. She was serious. I clung to her, begging her to come back to the room with me, but she refused. I lived in that house for several more years, but after that night, I never slept alone again. My mother never believed me, but my grandmother did, and I knew she understood what had crawled out from under that bed that night, something that should never have existed in our home.